Mara moved slowly through the cold mountain air as she held her heavy belly with one hand and a small bundle of sticks with the other. She was 8 months pregnant and alone, and every step felt like a test she never asked for. Her breath drifted into the air in soft white clouds. The mountain wind brushed against her face like a warning. Winter was close. She knew she needed shelter, or she and her child would not survive another night. She reached the spot she had chosen days ago. It was a small space between two fallen trees. The logs created a natural corner that could support a wall. Mara dragged more fallen logs toward the spot. Each piece felt heavier than the last. Her back ached and her legs trembled, but she kept going. She had no one else. Only her unborn child and the promise she whispered every morning, "I will protect you, no matter what." As she built the wall, she heard the forest behind her shift. A branch snapped, leaves pressed together. She froze. Her heart beat hard in her chest. She looked around but saw nothing except tall, dark trees. Maybe it was just the wind. Maybe it was an animal. She tried to shake off the fear and return to her work. She built the shelter piece by piece. The logs were uneven, but she stacked them with care. She filled the gaps with dirt and old grass to block the cold air. Her hands were rough and shaking by the time the sun began to fall behind the mountain. When the last rays of light touched the shelter, she stepped back and looked at it. It was not perfect. It was not strong. But it was hers. And for now it was enough. She entered the shelter and sat down on the ground. Her feet were numb. Her child moved inside her. A soft push. A soft reminder that she was not alone. Mara smiled at the thought and closed her eyes for a moment. Then she heard something. Soft footsteps outside. Not the steps of a deer. Not the steps of a bear. Too light, too careful. Her eyes opened wide. She held her breath. The steps moved around her shelter, slow, observing, listening. She wanted to call out, but her throat tightened. What if it was a person? What if it was not? She waited. The sound stopped. The forest grew silent again. Only her heartbeat filled the small space. After a minute, she forced herself to breathe again. Night settled across the mountains. Mara stayed awake, listening for every sound. Every whisper of the wind. Every rustle of leaves. She did not sleep. Fear kept her alert. Her child moved again inside her, and she whispered into the darkness, "It is going to be all right. I will not fail you." When dawn arrived, she walked out of the shelter and froze. Something was different. Something impossible. In front of her door was a neat pile of firewood. Fresh cut, clean, arranged with care. She had not put it there. She knew that with total certainty. She had no tools to cut wood this clean. And she had been awake most of the night. Someone had been near her. Someone who watched her. Someone who knew she needed help. Mara stepped closer to the firewood and her heart pounded. She looked around the trees. She looked into the shadows. She saw nothing, yet she felt eyes on her. Eyes that had been watching for longer than she knew. She whispered into the forest, "Who is there?" But the forest did not answer. Fear mixed with confusion. She should be afraid, yet the firewood was a gift. A silent message. Someone had kept her alive through the night. She carried the wood inside. Her hands shook. Her breath shook. Her mind raced. She was 8 months pregnant. Alone, weak, vulnerable. And now she knew the truth. She was not alone in these mountains. Someone had been watching her. Someone had chosen not to show themselves, and she did not know if that someone was a friend or something far more dangerous. Mara stepped outside her shelter with slow, careful steps. Her breath drifted into the cold morning air as she looked at the neat pile of firewood again. It felt like a message, a warning, or help from someone she had never seen. She scanned the tall trees around her. The forest felt alive, watching, breathing. Waiting. She picked up one piece of wood and held it in her hands. The cut was smooth as if made by a sharp tool. Not something she could create on her own. She felt a pressure growing in her chest. A strange mix of fear and curiosity. Whoever had placed this wood knew her situation. Knew her weakness. Knew she needed fire. That meant they had come close. Very close. Mara moved a little into the open clearing and raised her voice. "Is anyone out there? Thank you for the wood." Her voice echoed weakly between the trees and faded. Nothing answered her, not even a bird. The silence felt heavy. She turned back toward her shelter, but something on the ground caught her eye. A footprint. Just one. It was shaped like a human. Foot yet longer and narrower. The toes were sharp, almost pointed. She knelt to look closer. The print was fresh. She touched the edge and the dirt crumbled under her fingertips. Someone had been here moments before sunrise, watching her, walking near her shelter. Close enough to leave this behind. Mara stood up fast as fear crawled across her skin. She wrapped her arms around her belly and whispered to her child, "I will keep you safe." No matter what, she walked along the tree line searching for more tracks. Every rustle in the leaves made her heart race. Every shifting shadow felt like a figure that moved when she turned away, yet she saw no one. Just tall ancient trees and thick roots that twisted out of the ground. Like sleeping beasts. By midday, she returned to her shelter. She gathered her tools and began strengthening the walls. She wanted to believe the Watcher was friendly, yet she knew better than to trust the unknown. Her father used to tell her that mountains hide many secrets. Humans are not always the biggest. Danger. Sometimes the danger is something older and stronger. As she worked, she felt eyes on her again. She stopped and looked into the forest. The air was still. The world was quiet. Then she saw a shape far between the trunks. A tall, dark figure standing without movement. The outline of a head and shoulders, watching her. She blinked and the figure was gone. Her heart jumped into her throat. She stepped back toward the shelter door. She whispered, "Let me see you. Let me know who you are." But the forest remained empty. The only answer was the soft whisper of wind through the branches. Fear pushed her to act. She gathered vines and sharp sticks and created a simple trap around the edge of the clearing. If anything walked too close, the sticks would break and fall. She tied them carefully and checked each one twice. She hoped the noise would warn her, or scare away whatever moved in the trees. She did not want to hurt anyone. She only wanted to know the truth. When night came, she sat inside her shelter with the fire burning low. Shadows danced across the wooden walls. The wind outside changed. Tone. It became softer, almost like footsteps. Mara closed her eyes and listened. The steps circled the shelter, slow, quiet, careful, as if the Watcher already knew about her traps. She held her breath. The fire crackled. The footsteps stopped. She waited. Nothing. Then a faint sound touched the air. A soft whisper. Right outside the wall. Not words she understood. Not a human voice. Yet the tone felt gentle. Almost protective. She gripped her blanket. Her whole body shook. She wanted to cry out, but fear locked her throat. The whisper faded. The footsteps moved away. The forest returned to silence. Morning arrived with a pale gray sky. Mara stepped outside expecting her traps to be disturbed. But each one stood untouched. No tracks near them. No signs of movement. Yet she knew the Watcher had been close all night. She walked a few steps into the clearing and froze. Another gift lay on the ground. This time it was a small blanket made from strange, soft material. Something she had never seen or touched before. Warm, clean, new. Mara lifted it with shaking hands. This was not the work of a wild animal. And it was not something a normal mountain person could make. She looked toward the trees and whispered with fear and wonder. Who are you? Why are you helping me?" But the forest stayed silent. Only the watcher knew the answer. Mara held the strange soft blanket in her hands and felt a chill move through her heart. It was warm and smooth and shaped with great skill. No tool she owned could create something like this. No normal hunter or traveler carried such material. Whoever the watcher was, they had knowledge far greater than hers. They had power. They had resources. And they were close. She stepped back inside her shelter and placed the blanket beside her. Her child moved again as if sensing her fear. She touched her stomach and whispered, "You are safe. I will keep you safe." But she did not know if her words were true. Not anymore. As daylight faded, Mara went out to gather more water. The forest felt different now. The shadows were thicker. The silence was sharper. She felt watched at every turn and every step. She filled her pot from the stream, and when she stood up, she felt a breath of cold air behind her. She spun around with wide eyes. Nothing. Only trees and darkness. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. She needed to stay calm. Fear would drown her if she let it. But as she began to walk back, she heard a voice. A low, deep whisper carried through the trees. The sound froze her in place. Her heart hammered. She turned again and looked into the forest. The voice spoke once more. "You are not safe here." Mara felt her legs weaken. The voice was not human, or at least not fully human. It carried a strange tone, like wind shaped into speech. She held her pot tightly and called out, "Who are you? Show yourself." But no one stepped out. The forest stayed still. She tried again. "You left the wood. You left the blanket. Why?" Silence answered her again. The voice did not return. Only her own breath filled the cold air. She walked back slowly, her steps uneven, and her hands shaking. She reached her shelter and placed the water down. Her mind raced. She knew the watcher was not a normal person. She had suspected it, but now she felt it with certainty. Something was happening in these mountains. Something that involved her. Something dangerous. Hours passed as she worked to patch her roof. Then she noticed something strange on the rock beside her shelter. Dark marks, shapes burned into the stone. She stepped closer and traced the edges with her fingers. The symbols did not belong to any language she knew. They looked like warnings or signs of danger. The stone felt warm to her touch, though the air around her was cold. She stepped back fast. Her breath shook. These symbols had not been here yesterday. Someone had marked them during the night. Someone wanted her to see them. As the sky darkened, a heavy storm rolled over the mountains. Wind tore through the trees and sheets of rain slammed against the earth. Mara rushed inside her shelter as the storm grew stronger. Water dripped from the roof, but the walls held together. She sat close to the fire and prayed the storm would pass quickly. Then she heard it. The sound of logs moving outside her shelter, heavy thuds. Slow and steady, as if someone was reinforcing the walls from the outside. Her heart pounded. She crawled to the small opening between the logs and looked out. She expected to see a person, a shape, anything, but she saw nothing. Only rain, only darkness. Yet the sound continued. Someone was working around her shelter. Someone who did not want her to freeze in the storm. Once the noise stopped, she crawled back to the fire with confusion flooding her mind. This watcher was strange, dangerous maybe, but they were not trying to harm her. For now, the storm lasted deep into the night. Mara finally drifted into uneasy sleep. When she woke, the world outside was quiet again. She stepped out and felt shock rush through her. Her shelter looked stronger. The logs had been tightened and new branches had been added to block the wind. She touched the new pieces. They were fresh. Someone had worked on them only hours ago. Then she saw it. A small object placed on the ground in front of her. She picked it up and her breath caught in her throat. It was a wooden figure, hand-carved, shaped with great care. It showed a woman holding a baby. Her face looked like Mara. The baby looked like her child. Whoever carved this knew about her, saw her, understood her, and maybe even knew her future. Fear wrapped around her heart. She looked into the forest and whispered, "What do you want from me?" But the only answer was the soft rustle of trees in the wind. Night settled slowly over the mountains, and Mara felt the weight of darkness press against her shelter. The wind changed as if the forest were holding its breath. Her hands rested on her stomach as she sat close to the fire. The wooden figure the Watcher had carved lay beside her. She tried not to look at it, but she could feel its presence like a quiet whisper. Her child moved again. A slow turn inside. Mara whispered, "You are safe with me." Yet even as she spoke, she did not believe her own words. Something felt wrong in the air tonight. Something felt too still, too silent. She stood and checked the walls of her shelter. They were stronger now thanks to the strange hidden hand that had worked during the storm. But stronger did not mean safe. Not in these mountains. Not with the strange voice in the trees. Not with tracks that did not belong to any creature. She knew that as she listened, she heard something far away. A low, deep growl rolling through the forest. Her breath stopped. She tightened her grip on the small stick she used as a tool. It was useless against danger, yet holding it gave her strength. She stepped back into the shelter and closed the door of woven branches. The growl came again. This time it was closer. Stronger. Heavy. It carried hunger. It carried intent. It carried something ancient. The fire flickered as if frightened by the sound. Mara pressed her hand over her belly. Fear climbed her chest like ice. She whispered, "Stay calm. Stay quiet." But her voice cracked and trembled. Then she heard footsteps. Not light footsteps like the Watcher. Heavy steps that crushed leaves and snapped branches. Something large moved through the trees. Something with weight and purpose. That Mara crawled to the small opening between the logs and looked into the night. At first she saw nothing. Only darkness and the faint glow of moonlight on wet bark. Then she saw movement. A shadow, big, wrong in shape, its limbs too long. Its back arched like a crawling beast. Her heart jumped as the creature stepped into the clearing. Its skin looked like dark stone. Its eyes glowed pale white. It sniffed the air with slow, sharp breaths. Searching, hunting. It turned its head toward her shelter. Mara covered her mouth. Her body shook. Her child pressed against her from within, as if sensing the danger outside. The creature let out a long, deep roar that shook the ground under her feet. Then it lunged toward the shelter. Mara screamed and backed away from the wall. The creature slammed into the logs. Wood cracked. The shelter shook. Dirt fell from the ceiling. Another strike. Then another. She held her stomach and whispered, "I am here, little one. Hold on. Hold on." Just as the creature raised its clawed arm to tear through the wall, a sharp new sound ripped through the night. A fast, heavy impact. The creature howled in pain. Something had struck it. Something had knocked it aside. Mara looked out again and saw a blur of motion. A tall figure moved through the shadows with impossible speed. It hit the creature again. And again. The creature staggered back and roared in fury. The Watcher was real. And he was fighting for her. The storm of movement was too fast for her eyes to follow. She heard bones crack. She heard heavy breaths. She heard the forest shake. Around them, the battle moved across the clearing and deeper into the trees. Roars echoed, blows struck. Then silence. Mara stayed frozen for a long moment. Her breath shook. Her legs felt weak. She listened for any sign of life outside. Then she heard a sound. Not the creature, a softer sound. A human gasp of pain. She stepped outside the shelter, holding the wooden wall for support. The moonlight revealed a dark shape lying near the edge of the clearing. She walked closer with fear and care. The shape moved slightly. She saw an arm, a shoulder. A face half hidden by shadows. It was a man, tall, strong, yet wounded. His clothing was strange with dull lights that flickered across his chest. His skin was scratched from the fight. His breath was uneven. Mara knelt beside him. "Are you the one who watched me? Are you the one who saved me?" The man opened his eyes. They glowed faint gold in the moonlight. He whispered one sentence before falling unconscious. "You were never alone." Mara felt the world tilt as fear and hope collided inside her heart. She looked toward the trees. The creature was gone, but this man had faced it for her. And now she needed to decide if he was friend or something far more dangerous. Mara stared at the wounded man lying in the cold grass as the moonlight shone across his strange armor. She felt fear rise inside her, but another feeling rose beside it. Hope. Someone had fought that dark creature for her. Someone had risked his life for her and her unborn child. She knelt beside him and placed her shaking hand near his shoulder. His skin felt warm, yet his breath was unsteady. He needed help. She whispered, "Please stay alive. You saved me. Let me save you now." She dragged him toward the shelter, one slow, painful step at a time. Her body hurt with every movement, yet she forced herself forward. The storm clouds drifted overhead, and faint thunder rolled through the mountains. She could not leave him outside. Not after what he had done. Inside the shelter, she laid him near the fire. She tore strips from an old cloth and wrapped them around the wounds on his arm and chest. The strange armor he wore was smooth and hard like metal, yet light as wood. She had never seen anything like it. She pressed her ear near his mouth and heard faint breathing. He was alive, barely. As the firelight brightened his face, she studied him. His features looked human, yet something felt different. His eyes, when they had opened in the moonlight, had not looked normal. They glowed, not with sickness, not with madness, but with purpose, with strength. Mara sat beside him through the night. Sometimes he whispered words she did not understand. Sometimes he twitched as if fighting an unseen battle. Dawn arrived. Slowly, the mountains turned pale gold, and the forest woke with creaking branches and distant bird calls. Mara reached for water and touched his forehead. His eyes opened. She froze. His gaze was sharp and deep. He looked at her with awareness. Not confusion, not fear. As if he knew exactly where he was. As if he had always known she would be the one to save him. He tried to sit up and nearly fell. Mara reached out to help him, and he did not resist. He looked around the small shelter and finally spoke. His voice was low and steady. "You should not be here. You and your child are in danger." Mara felt her heart twist. She asked, "What was that thing last night?" The stranger looked toward the door, as if expecting the creature to return. Then he answered in a quiet tone, "A hunter. Not from your world." Mara felt her skin go cold. Not from this world. She stepped back and her breath shook. She whispered, "What are you saying? What does that mean?" The stranger watched her with calm, steady eyes. "The mountains are not empty. There are things hidden here. Things that should never walk your earth again." She gripped her stomach as her child kicked inside her. She could hardly understand his words, yet something deep inside her knew he was telling the truth. She had felt it from the first night. These mountains held secrets far older and far darker than her fears. She asked, "Who are you?" The stranger lowered his head for a moment, as if deciding how much truth to reveal. Then he spoke, "I am human. But not like the humans you know. My people guard the old paths in the mountains. Paths that connect your world to places you are not ready to see." Mara stared at him in shock. Humans, hidden humans, watching from the mountains, protecting the world from things like the creature. She whispered, "You were watching me all this time." The stranger nodded slowly. "Yes, I was told to find you. You were not chosen by accident. You carry something special. That is why the hunter came." Mara felt her legs weaken. She sat down and held her stomach. Her voice broke as she asked, "What do you mean? What is special about my child?" The stranger looked at her with a heavy expression. "I do not know the full truth. I only know this. Your child carries a rare power. Something that should not exist in a normal human. Something that the hunter sensed. Something it wanted to take." Fear stabbed through Mara like a blade. She pressed both hands to her belly. She whispered, "No, they cannot have my child. They cannot touch him." The stranger nodded. Then he spoke with new strength. "That is why I fought for you. That is why I will keep fighting." He tried to stand, but pain pulled him back down. Mara reached out to steady him. He looked into her eyes and said, "You are not alone anymore. I will protect you, but we must move soon. More hunters will come." Mara felt the weight of his words. The truth was no longer something she could avoid. She and her unborn child were in danger. The forest was no longer a place she could hide. And the only person who knew how to save her was this stranger from a hidden world. Outside, the trees swayed with strange stillness, as if something watched from far away. Waiting for the next move, Mara watched the stranger struggle to sit upright, as faint morning light slid across the shelter floor. His wounds still hurt him, yet his eyes held a strong, fierce purpose. He was not a simple traveler. He was not a man lost in the mountains. He was something else, something trained, something shaped by a world she had never known existed. He looked toward the door with a tense, quiet focus. The forest is still. That is not good. Mara felt fear rise again. She whispered, "Why is it not good?" The stranger answered, "Because the hunters only grow silent when they are waiting for something. Waiting for a new order or a signal or a change." In the air, Mara held her belly and tried to calm her breathing. Her child moved inside her with gentle pushes, as if sensing the danger around them. She looked at the stranger and asked, "How long have you been watching me?" He closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke. "Since the day you climbed into these mountains. I saw your strength. I saw your fear. I saw your will to survive. You kept going even when you were alone. That is why I knew you were the one I was meant to find." Mara shook her head. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "But why me? Why my child? What makes us so important?" He stared at the fire as he answered, "There's an old story among my people. A prophecy that speaks of a human child born under a broken sky. A child who carries a rare spark. A spark that can awaken hidden power in our world or destroy it. When you crossed into these mountains, the old watchers felt a surge. A pulse of energy. Something they had not felt for many generations. That pulse came from you, and from the life inside you." Mara felt her heartbeat tremble. She whispered, "That is impossible. My child is normal. He is just a child." The stranger shook his head. "No, the hunter that came last night does not follow normal lives. It follows power, purpose, and threat. Your child is something that should not exist in this world. Yet here he is, growing inside you, waiting to be born." Mara looked down at her stomach in disbelief. She felt love rise through her fear. This child was hers. He was the only reason she had fought to survive. And now she learned he carried something powerful, something she did not understand. She whispered, "I will protect him, no matter what." The stranger nodded with respect. "That is why I was sent. To help you. To guard you. To face whatever comes." He pushed himself to his feet, though pain crossed his face as he moved. He stood tall in the dim shelter, and for the first time Mara saw the full shape of his armor. Thin plates of dark material clung to his body. Strange lights pulsed slowly across the surface. She touched one light and felt a soft vibration. She stepped back in shock. "What is this?" He answered, "Is old human tech from the Watchers of the Mountains. It was made to fight the hunters. It was made to keep the worlds apart." Mara stepped outside to breathe. The air felt heavy as if something unseen pressed down from the treetops. The forest did not move. The wind did not sing. Even the small animals had gone silent. She whispered, "They are near." "Are they not?" The stranger walked beside her and looked into the dark canopy. "Yes, hunters always return. They never stop once. A mark is set. They will come for the child again. They will not come alone next time." Mara felt her strength break for a moment. She leaned against the shelter wall and closed her eyes. Her fear rose like a sharp wave. Tears touched her face. "What am I supposed to do? I am only one woman. I cannot fight these monsters." The stranger placed his hand gently on her shoulder. His voice was steady and strong. "You are not only one woman. You carry the spark the hunters fear. And you are not alone anymore. You have me. And soon you will have others." Mara looked at him confused. "Others? Who?" He pointed toward the deeper forest. "The Watchers, my people. They have been waiting. If they sensed the hunter last night, they will come. They do not leave the old paths without reason. And they have reason now." A sudden loud crack echoed from the trees. Mara jumped. The stranger stepped in front of her with his arm raised. The crack came again, louder. Then the air filled with a roar that shook the ground. Mara clutched her belly. The stranger spoke with urgency. "It has returned. This time it is not alone." The forest moved as dark shapes stepped out from the shadows. Eyes glowing, claws raised, the threat was real. The danger was coming, and Mara understood one thing with absolute clarity. The battle for her child had only just begun. The forest shook as the dark shapes stepped into the clearing. Mara felt terror flood her entire body as she clutched her belly. The stranger stood in front of her with his strange armor glowing faint golden light. His stance was strong, yet she could see pain still rising through him. He whispered, "Stay behind me. They will try to reach you. Do not let them." Mara watched the creatures move. Their bodies twisted like shadows shaped into flesh. Their pale eyes burned with hunger. Each step they took left deep marks in the wet earth. The same kind of marks she had found near her shelter days ago. Marks she did not understand. Marks that now revealed the truth. These monsters had been hunting her from the start. The largest hunter stepped forward. Its chest rose and fell like a giant beast ready to strike. It lifted its head and let out a roar that made the ground tremble. Mara staggered back as a sharp pain rose inside her belly. Her child kicked hard, stronger than ever before. She gasped in shock. The stranger looked at her with sudden fear and understanding. "It is starting. Your child is coming now." Mara felt panic hit her. Now, in the middle of this nightmare, in the middle of danger, in the middle of the hunt. Her legs weakened and she fell to her knees. A wave of pain moved through her body. Tears filled her eyes. She cried out, "I cannot do this here. Please no, not now." The stranger moved fast and stood between her and the hunters. His armor brightened with a new fierce glow. The hunters reacted with growls as if the light hurt them. The stranger raised his hand. A bright blast shot forward and struck the nearest hunter. It stumbled but did not fall. Another blast followed, and this time the hunter roared in anger. The other hunters rushed toward him. He fought with desperate strength. His movements were swift, yet each strike cost him more energy. Blood dripped from his wounds. His breath grew heavy. Still he did not stop. Still he stood in front of Mara. Still he fought like the last defender of a dying world. Mara lay on the ground, gripping the earth, as pain surged through her. Her breath came fast. Her vision blurred. Her heart pounded like a hammer. She whispered, "Please stay strong. Please, child. Please wait." But her child did not wait. The world inside her moved with wild force. Then another wave of pain tore through her body, and she screamed. Her scream echoed across the mountains. All the hunters turned toward her. The stranger shouted, "No, stay back. He struck them again with his glowing arm. But the hunters pushed forward. Their claws dug into the ground. Their pale eyes locked on Mara. The strongest hunter lowered its head and charged straight toward her. Mara could not move. She tried, but her body refused to respond. Pain held her down. Fear crushed her. Her child pushed again, harder than before. She cried out in fear, in hope, in desperation. Then the world changed. A burst of bright white light exploded from her body. Pure light, fierce light. Light that carried power she never knew. The hunters screamed as the light hit them. Their skin cracked. Their bodies fell back. The strongest hunter let out a roar of panic and turned away as if fleeing from something. Far beyond its understanding, the stranger stared with wide, astonished eyes. He whispered, "It has begun." The spark is waking. The light grew brighter until the entire clearing shimmered with energy. Trees shook, stones vibrated. The air itself seemed to bend. Mara felt the pain rise to its peak. Then with one final push, she brought her child into the world. Silence followed. The light faded slowly like dawn, sinking back into night. Mara held her newborn child close to her chest. Tears ran down her face, not from fear, from awe, from love, from the miracle she had just witnessed. The stranger knelt beside her with slow, careful movements. His armor flickered weakly. His voice trembled with respect. "Your child is not only human. He carries power older than the hunters, power they fear, power they cannot face." Mara looked at her baby, his eyes opened. They glowed with soft, warm light. A light that felt alive. A light that felt like hope. Branches moved behind them. Footsteps approached. Mara looked up with sudden fear, but the stranger touched her arm gently. "Do not be afraid. These are watchers. My people. They have come to protect you." Figures stepped out of the woods. Tall humans dressed in ancient armor with faint shining lines. They looked at Mara with deep respect. Then they knelt in the dirt. Before her and her child, their leader spoke with a strong, steady voice. "The child is born. The spark has awakened. Humanity rises again." Mara held her child closer. The fear in her heart faded. The danger was not gone yet. But she was no longer alone. A new future had begun, and her child would lead it.